Well, in the theme park space, Epic Universe is, of course, the talk of the town, you could say. But this brand new park isn't even open yet, even though people have been able to go to this park for a couple of months now, either through team member previews and their family members, and currently going on, you have annual pass holder previews or more general previews for hotel guests of Universal as well. So a lot of people have been in this park, and it is getting a lot of good reviews, myself included, but there have been some critiques of this park. And one of the things you've seen online and probably the theme park space are some people complaining about the sightlines when you're in some of these lands, that you can see the Helios Grand Hotel and other landmarks in the park, claiming that it breaks the immersion of the theme park in general. And it's an interesting topic, and it's one that we're going to discuss today about sightlines in Epic Universe and in general, how sightlines are treated in theme parks, and is this something that current day theme parks really prioritize, and do the general public really care about them? So that is what we are going to talk about today.
I noticed that in the very beginning, when you're walking through and you look to the left, you can see Stardust Racers, like almost like right next to the land. And I had him rewind it back and I said, "Is that Stardust Racers?" And he said, "I believe it is." So, and again, maybe we're just sticklers that way because we're just nerds. But do you think that was intentional, that Universal did it that way? Because isn't that the whole point of why they did the portals, was to kind of block you off from everything else while you're entering in through the Olive Burke?
Yeah.
You're then seeing another whole land with a roller coaster kind of
Yeah.
sitting right.
I've seen that discussion. I mean, for me personally, I'm not a huge stickler on sightlines just because I think they're gonna happen. Like if you look at like Frontierland, we were back there in Magic Kingdom, you can see the castle in certain views. So like it doesn't ruin my immersion. But Universal, as far as I can remember, I don't think they've really been sticklers on sightlines in terms of the existing park. So for them, maybe that's not something they worry about. But you can see things outside of it. But when I'm in there, maybe I was just so into the day, like I didn't notice that stuff. I mean, you could obviously see the Dragon building in the background. You can see Helios from most of the lands. I think all the lands. It just kind of depends on how you look at it. Like for me, it doesn't mess with me because I've never been a huge stickler on sightlines. Like I'm not actually in a Viking village sort of thing. But I think it's one of those things, like if you are a sightlines person, you will be able to point out things like Stardust Racers is, and I knew that during the construction, it literally runs right next to Hiccup's Wing Gliders. So you'll be able to see that from different ones there.
It's interesting, Jared. Yeah, the sightline thing, I've seen a lot of like the debate and just like, yeah, I'll just say debate on social media.
Debates.
About the sightline stuff. And like, yeah, I think as theme park nerds, we get into it, right? We get into like the nitty gritty stuff, including myself. I'm like with Disneyland Resort, I'm like with the Pixar Pier, and you can see the Anaheim Convention Center. I'm like, oh,
right,
God, right. So I'm like that, but I actually did a video recently on my channel where I brought on a friend of ours. His name is Tones, where he's more of a film dude, right? Like he does a lot of like Game of Thrones content and Marvel stuff, but he's not really a parks person. He's only been at Disneyland like twice in his whole life. And I brought him on. And the whole point of it was kind of like we're gonna kind of look at the footage of Epic Universe from that normie perspective, right? So for the theme park nerds, we're all nitpicking the sightlines and all that, but I asked him straight up. I go, "Hey, Tones, like, what do you think about this? Like, you're a normie. You don't really go to these parks. Like, is that sightline a problem for you? Is that going to ruin your experience?" He's like, "I don't care." Like he doesn't care at all. I mean, so the normies, the average person, the soccer mom, the families, they don't care. But for like our community, like the theme park nerds, oh, believe me, it's going to be months of debate
for sure. And I get like there's going to be things. I think my biggest takeaway from that whole entire day was I just feel like I scratched the surface of what the park has. That we were trying to do all the rides. So there's going to be things in there that I'm going to look at and say, oh, like there's going to be nitpicky things. But yeah, I do think like when you're talking the normal people going in there, I don't think sightlines are something that they're overly concerned about. But I get it's the same thing with like comic books. Like you make a comment, like I remember watching, what was the movie? X-Men 3. And I remember in the theater, I verbally was like, that's BS, because in that Juggernaut, he's not a mutant technically. So in that movie, that girl that had the powers, spoiler alert, that
Mm-hmm.
could diffuse the mutants, she diffused Juggernaut, and I was like, that's nonsense. And I started like yelling. My buddy's like, what in the deal? I was like, he's not a mutant. So everybody else is just like, oh, this is a cool movie. But like, you know, you can pick out certain things. But I would be very curious if you're ever to talk to a Universal creative. I just get the idea that they're not overly concerned with it.
Yeah, can I piggyback on that too?
Yeah.
And you know, I feel like the whole sightline rule went away originally with Epcot in 1982, because you can see other countries from other countries. If you go on the monorail, you can see, you know, what was at the one time East and West, right? So they divided it into, what was it? George, help me out here. Innovations East and West.
Oh
yeah, Innovations East and West, and you had the land, you know, living with the land. And I feel that rule was broken a long time ago, and for whatever reason, we're applying old engineering rules to new theme parks when they threw that out of the window a long time ago. I feel like that's applicable to castle parks, however, mainly the smaller castle parks, because castle parks have primarily smaller ride attractions. And now with these new ride attractions that they're trying to build, everything is bigger and larger and taller in scope, and it just becomes exceedingly more difficult in order to achieve what was easy, you know, 60, 70 years ago. I mean, even in Islands of Adventure, where it's built around an entire lagoon, you can see Velocicoaster from
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter on the bridge, you know, and you could just pick a view in that park, and you can look right over into another land. And that's kind of the appeal of Islands of Adventure. And well, I guess one could say that's probably the appeal to Universal Studios Florida as well, and World, you know, Epcot, because it has World Showcase. So, yeah, I'm with Tones. Like, normies don't care, and I kind of think that they like the fact that they can look over and see another land and kind of point their attention and their interest to that and say, "Hey, let's beat feet over that way. That looks pretty cool."
See, and that's what I liked in the Celestial Park is you see little, like you can see the Isle of Burke Peak, you can see different things, and almost like entices you to come into the portals. Like you can just see these landmarks, some of them behind it. For me, I thought it was kind of cool. It's like when you're in the center, it kind of gives this idea of like everything.
Yes, see, I agree with you with that. And I'm just going to give a little pushback on it because I just think, yeah, why not? But like in Celestial Park, I feel like that should be the objective, because when you're starting out, you're then seeing all these portals, and it's like, okay, you're looking beyond.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that throws off the enticement. Now, again, I'm just a nerd this way because I go all by like storytelling, that when you're trying to tell a story, it kind of should be cohesive. But the overall storyline of how I'm perceiving Epic Universe is, once you step through that portal, it's, for me, and again, when it's a theme park, you know, you can only do so much. I get it. But I mean, like when you go through a portal, like saying, okay, you're walking through into the world of How to Train Your Dragon or the world of the classic monsters. For me, I would want to see nothing else, just that, because it's like, okay, I'm walking through a portal with that. Why should I then be seeing something in another portal when technically I'm supposed to be going through a portal into a different world?
From a story standpoint, it probably would be ideal if you were just that immersed. I would imagine if you're in, talking about Isle of Burke specifically, blocking off views of Stardust Racers would be difficult unless the track was put somewhere else, just because it's so tall and big and it's that close. Helios,
and that's also why I wanted to know, because since you were actually
I'll be honest, I don't recall, and granted, we were just a whirlwind of a day. I don't recall seeing Stardust Racers while we were in there, but I wasn't really looking around too much. But I get it, like if you've seen footage of it. So for me, when we were in there, I was just like, we were going here, checking this out. So my head was not looking around that much. But you can see Helios basically from every portal, which I think that may be by design, because Helios plays into the story. So I would be curious to know, like, the whole story of it is the Celestials have come across ancient technology. They didn't build it, but they're able to do these portals. So I don't know if maybe their story, their lore is the fact that when you're in these portals, maybe you're still able to see into, you know, I don't know if that's how far they take it or not, but it just simply could be theme park sightlines that were just, they looked at as inevitable to get around.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too that's worth mentioning is these parks are very malleable. Like they're ever kind of changing. right? Like, so we had a lot of sightline issues and stuff initially with DCA when it first opened in 2001, but then new things get built. We get, now Mission Breakout, and then we got Cars Land. We got so as you build out these things, like the sightlines became less and less of an issue because you're starting to build, you're fleshing out this place, right?
Yeah, and that's what's going to drive me nuts if they put Pandora into Hollywoodland.
Right. But
for me, depending on how it is built, when I'm walking through Pandora and Animal Kingdom, that's all really that I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you could see something else. As far as I know, I don't recall seeing anything else when I'm in Pandora. So when I'm in Pandora, I don't want to see Mission Breakout looming in the distance.
Right. But like my more point with Epic though is like I feel like it's such a new fledgling park that eventually the trees grow and then eventually you build other things. There could be something that's going to kind of block this stuff out kind of organically as the park kind of grows.
That is something to note. I have heard people talk about Celestial Park is like there's not a ton of shade throughout the parks. At some places there is shade, but those trees, once they're transplanted, and I think Slimer had pointed out before, like it takes time for those things to go. I think give that thing 2 or 3 years, you could see some of those sightline issues, like you were saying, just be taken care of by trees. Like especially in Dark Universe, there's so many trees in there. I would imagine once that really flushes out, you may not be able to see much. And they could go back. I mean, when they expand, they could always go in and try and do things. So I do imagine it's a great, like I think I put it. Somebody had mentioned before. As a new theme park, look at it as a foundation. It's fantastic of what they will build off of. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Slimer about the Epcot argument because you can see Spaceship Earth from most places.
Well, it's interesting too. Like even if you look at back, like in 1959, when Walt built the monorail and the Matterhorn. I've actually made this argument a lot because a lot of Disneyland fans are like, why is the red car trolley going through Avengers Campus? I'm like, well, why is a monorail circling the Swiss Alps at Disneyland?
Right. Yeah.
like a lot of stuff doesn't make sense when you really look at it. You know what I'm saying? So, it kind of depends on like how you look at it. But yeah, I mean, there are inconsistencies with these places and like for theme park nerds like myself, like I do get annoyed with some of these sightlines, like the Pixar Pier thing drives me nuts, but at the same time, I've said it before in the channel where it's like it bugs me, but at the same time I get it, like the normie isn't going to care. Like Pixar Pier isn't my favorite thing. I think it looks pretty cheap, it's not my but I'm like, hey, I told,
it's not going to stop you from going.
Yeah, it's not gonna stop me from going, and I get it. Like I know they're never gonna demolish it because the families love it. It's like and it's always the busiest land. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. But as a nerd, it's like, yeah, we're gonna nitpick. It's like you were saying, Jared, with the like Marvel or whatever. Like we're gonna nitpick. Like, well, that's not exactly like
don't enjoy it. Yeah, it doesn't mean you don't enjoy it. It's just that's what also fan bases do. Like this is one thing I think Hollywood's gotten wrong is like every little critique they take personally or something, and it's like this is what you do. Have you ever been to a comic book shop? Like dudes will argue endlessly about who would beat Hulk versus Superman. You're never going to get an actual end to that argument, but it'll become
that's why I just pull out what I do with everything. I just throw myself down on the floor and have a tantrum.
There you go. There he does. Hey, absolutely.
And here over there, just get mad.
Just get mad. Well, it's funny too. You bring up a great point, Jared. Hollywood studios get real upset over that stuff. You know what? Hollywood studios, if people, executives at Hollywood ever come across this video, right? When you should really worry is when people don't care enough to argue about it. That's when you should really worry.
Is the death of a brand.
Yes.
And I think that's like if people are doing hour-long videos nitpicking things in a movie, that means they care enough to do it. And it's like I've always had the contention too of like if you try and placate your hardcore fans, you're never going to please all of them. But if for the most part, you're like you'd say as true as you can, those people are then going to be your best messengers for the normie crowd. Because if they're excited, the normies get excited. When your crew of people is not excited, the normies may not be excited at all.
Well, and I feel like it's more like a guideline than a rule. To quote Dr. Venkman from Ghostbusters 2. Okay, so there's your Ghostbusters.
There it is.
An hour in, we got it. I knew it.
Yeah, there you go. I feel like it's more of a guideline. Like if you can do 80 to 90% without breaking the rule or the guideline, if you will, then you've achieved what it is that you sought out to achieve, which is a high level of immersion. And then if it turns out that you need to break the level of immersion in order to incorporate something that is worth breaking that immersion, like let's say Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, for example. Look, I don't like looking at the building when I'm walking up to Epcot. I really don't. I'll admit. It's a big building, and it
Looks
really
like
does.
Amazon warehouse that's just next to a theme park.
Yeah, it's an Amazon warehouse with So, but in that instance, for example, like that is worth breaking the illusion of just walking up to the Epcot ball, because once you ride the ride, it's obvious that was worth breaking the guideline. But there is a ratio. Like if they're only breaking the guideline 40 or 50% of the time, obviously that's not acceptable. And how we know that? Because there's a consistency that these things are executed at when it comes to, maintaining the illusion. And so, I think that with respect to when do you do it, I think there is probably a question the engineers ask themselves, which is like, okay, is it worth breaking the illusion for this ride? And then if the answer ultimately is yes, then they do it.
That would make a lot of sense. Like, just almost like a risk.
Jared, I have one last critique question for you, because majority of my thoughts on Epic Universe are surprisingly positive. I mean, I haven't even been there yet, so I just wanted to kind of get my critiques out first, so then we can get into the positive stuff. But the one other thing that I've noticed when we were going over the walkthrough was in Dark Universe, for how immersive that land looks. I mean, to look at it even on screen, to think, okay, this actually is real. It's not AI. It's like how like in depth of like in detail it must have looked in real life person to you. But when it comes to the curse of the werewolf coaster, now at the time when we saw the video, I'm assuming, do they still have, I guess, what I like to call the mosquito netting like around the track? Because for me, that was a little bit unsightly. But did they have that because are you allowed to actually take your stuff on?
Yeah, I don't really know. I feel like that was a last minute addition, because I remember watching the construction photos and all of a sudden that popped up and it was just all over the track. I'm assuming they don't have lockers on that ride, I don't believe. So I'm wondering if, because it spins and that track does go over walkways, that they're just worried about people's stuff flying out and hitting people, or maybe it was an OSHA thing or an insurance thing they came back with. But it is weird. But at night, I do believe they have projections on the netting and like the fence nearby. So at night they kind of use it to their advantage. Now during the day, it's just there. We actually didn't ride that ride because my wife has horrible motion sickness, and I was like, I'll ride it another time because it just spins the whole way. But that one, I will say that one, it looks not the best when you just.
I feel like that's easily resolvable with a 45-degree wall made out of wood, and then on the outside of it, facing the guest walkway, you can have dead bodies, corpses, spikes. But on the inside, of course, it would be nice and clean. So that way, if anything hits it, it just hits it because it's 45-degree angle. Then it just falls right into a collection point, and they can gather belongings at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And also the walkway, when you're walking, like you have Frankenstein Manor on the right, and then you see the coaster on the left. If memory serves me correct, and Jared, you correct me if I'm wrong, but like I think there is a row of trees there.
Yes, there is.
Eventually, that will probably not block it completely, but I would imagine help.
That whole ride area. I remember there's a bunch of trees in the queue too. I imagine that place is just going to be almost a forest by the time all this stuff grows up, because they put a ton of trees in Dark Universe, which I imagine we didn't get to experience the park at night because it closed at 7 when we were there. So I'm excited to go back whenever it's open till like 9 and 10 o'clock. But I would imagine at night with all those trees, it's going to feel even more ominous, just like almost a spooky feeling. And the fog effects and stuff when you walk in, even in the daytime, are cool.